everyone has an origin story, and it's easy to forget that Mike Skinner, and as you see in my pictures, was like a little baby. His cherubic little face. Who'd have thought he'd become the person that he became?
I was taking a look at some of your contacts, and I found Mike Skinner. So I'm a big fan of the streets. So I thought this would be a great video to do. So it's 2002, you told me.
Yeah, a kind of long lost shoot that I kind of discounted. And I did go on to photograph him after original pirate material, and he became huge, and I really liked that shoot. But actually, this shoot is far more interesting. He looks like a child.
Yeah, I was looking at the contacts. I wasn't even sure if it was Mike Skinner.
Yeah.
It looked familiar, but I didn't know who it was. I couldn't put my finger on it.
Well, I would say with Mike Skinner, he is by far and away one of the most photogenic people that I've ever photographed. He reminded me of a sort of you. You know, he had these sort of bush baby eyes, these sorts like a little kind of tree frog or something. I mean, you know, very appealing, very dark, very soulful. And in these pictures, you know, he does look like a child. You know, he does sort of. This is all before it all kicked off.
It was in preparation for original pirate material, so it was probably a couple months before it released, right?
Yeah, that's right. And the song that he'd done was,
How's it come to this?
yeah, sort of garage, sort of smash,
Yeah,
kind of
iconic tune.
iconic. But I guess people didn't really know who he was. And this, I got commissioned by the Telegraph, which is kind of an unusual publication to be interested in Mike Skinner. And in my diary, it says Mike Skinner brackets rapper. So I knew nothing about him. I knew that he was in Barnett in North London, and reading the article, it would seem that he left the Midlands in order to come down to London like Dick Whittington and make his fortune.
And so he did.
And boy, did he do that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I mean, I went on to photograph him 2 years later, and for the Observer, and by then he was huge. And we won't cover that shoot today, but either in that article, or maybe I think it was in that article, he talks of himself in the same way, in the same league as the Beatles, and he says rather than just copying the Beatles like Oasis,
We
he's
need to stop digging at
no,
Oasis.
no, I like Oasis, but this is Mike's opinion.
Okay.
He wanted to do something completely different, and that's what he did. I mean, it's a kind of urban, soulful poetry that is his stock and trade.
Yeah, it's true. So inspired by the Beatles in a sense, doing something completely unique
Mm.
in his own lane.
And so he was basically staying in Barnet, which is North London. It's a kind of faceless suburb, quite well to do. Although the house that he was living in looked like a squat. I mean, there was wallpaper coming off the walls. I don't know about the personal circumstances of
Was it his home?
it. No, it was his cousins, or his an aunt maybe, or an uncle. He was
Gotcha.
his family. It says in the article that he was staying with his family. As I said, came to London to because that's where the bright lights and that's where the opportunities were. And the strange thing about it was, you know, I have these ideas that I kind of shoehorn my subjects into doing. And I quite like liminal spaces, these kind of weird places that you just pass, that you never investigate. And one of them is sort of on motorways, you have the area adjacent to the hard shoulder because no one ever stops on the hard shoulder. And there's all sort of detritus there and rubbish. And I managed to persuade him to drive to the M25, and we parked on the hard shoulder. I mean, you couldn't do that now. And we sort of went down into the embankment, and goodness knows what was there. There was just,
Real no man's land.
there was sort of underwear, there was sort of prams, there was just nappies, there was just rubbish, people chucked from cars and so on. It was just a strange environment to photograph him. But what I noticed about him was that he's very open and very avant-garde, very kind of unconstrained by sort of convention. He just liked the idea of doing something a bit different.
Yeah. So that was your first
So
spot.
yeah, we drove to the M25, and we just parked my car on the hard shoulder, which I still can't believe I did, and then we just went into the embankment, and it was all forest around there.
And was that a preconceived idea?
No, it was sort of I don't have any preconceived ideas. I just sort of go on this little odyssey with Mike, and we sort of, it was all getting a bit marshy, I think, in this wood, and so we were kind of getting bogged down. So we took a few pictures. It was all all on film back then. My Fuji 6.9 rangefinder, I think, mostly. And then, then I wanted to try something else. I think we went back to the house and I did some pictures of in the house, which I used flash, and notably my ring flash. I sort of did some straight on headshots, which were low hanging fruit with his like Fred like eyes, these big brown eyes. And then we went for a little walk around the immediate area. And that's where I got the most interesting picture.
Okay, so before we get onto that, so you did the motorway shoot, and then you took him into his own home, and it was like a bit rough around the edges.
Yeah, I mean, I might have done his home pictures before the motorway,
Right.
but yeah,
Around then.
yeah.
Yeah, and you said liminal spaces. What do you mean by that? What's liminal mean?
I think in a liminal space, a bit like that famous film with Lost in Translation with Scarlett Johansson. She's in a liminal space because she's neither an airport is kind of a liminal space. It's a kind of place which is neither one thing nor another. It's sort
It's
of,
not the destination.
I may be completely making this up, but a bit like limbo. You're not in heaven and you're not in hell. You're kind of in that kind of transitional
Well,
space.
we'll let people correct you in the comments
Yeah,
if you got that
absolutely.
wrong.
Feel free to
Yeah,
chip
I
in.
actually a couple of times you say things which
Absolute nonsense.
no, not necessarily. I check like online to see if you've used the word correctly. Normally you have, but like one thing you said bona fide
A bona fide genius.
in a previous video, and people
Yeah.
were taking the piss because it's bona fide. And then I went onto Google and I pressed the little microphone,
Bona fide.
and apparently it's bona fide. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I'm nothing if not an educator.
Okay.
No, it was. I love that idea of those sorts. Quite often, those unloved, weird little places. That by busy roads that no one ever visits. That or motor or you shouldn't. I'm not advocating anyone ever do this, but by railway lines and that type of thing. I remember when I was at Plymouth College of Art and Design, I'd often be walking home along the railway line. It's quite dangerous, but it's an interesting environment.
Yeah, it's quite magical. No one goes there. Like walking through a park and going through the bushes.
Yeah.
Off the path.
I'm not advocating hanging around in the bushes. We'd covered that with Miroslav Tichy.
Yeah, check that video out if you haven't.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you said then you got your favorite picture.
Yeah.
So before you jump into that, where were you? You left the house.
Yeah, we went for a stroll around Barnett, and I think we were near the railway line actually, similarly, and we were sort of going on an overpass, and there was lots of graffiti. He was wearing a snorkel parka, one of those with the
like your Jarvis picture,
the acrylic hood, acrylic fur hood, and I just got a couple of frames with him putting it up, and he looks quite wistful in the pictures. It's prescient. It's sort of looking into the future. I mean, imagine if he had any idea how successful he was going to be, and and the fact that we're still talking about him 20 years hence, and he's been in Glastonbury and stuff like that. It's impressive, but the picture of him with the hood eventually made it into the archive of the National Portrait Gallery, and interestingly, I never put that picture in my portfolio. The subsequent shoot that I did for the Observer, I had a whole day with him, and we were hanging out, and we'll do another video on that. And those pictures were much more obviously Mike Skinner, the streets, the folklore, the myth that he kind of subsequently created. But I think the picture on the bridge is more true, and he looks a bit vulnerable.
Yeah,
and
I think it's my favorite picture of Mike Skinner, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like it, and that's why I think we're going to make it available for the first time.
Yeah, so we'll put it on the website. We've been starting to do more print drops. We just throw them on the website for each video.
It's a way of supporting the channel, but also I think it's a nice way of getting my work out there. And I like to think of it. We try and make it affordable, and it's a nice thought to think that these pictures will be there on people's walls and giving people a bit of joy.
Yeah, if one of them is on your wall, tag Dad on Instagram and he'll share it on his story or something.
You'll get shared.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm a massive fan of Mike Skinner. Everything I've seen of him, he seems like a really nice guy. How did you find him?
He was he was quite shy. As I said, he was open to creativity, which is exactly what you want in that sort of situation. You know, he was unusual. He was probably, you know, I probably mistook his shyness for enigma, but he was genuinely just up in London, so it was probably kind of, you know, a novelty doing this shoot, and he gave me plenty of time, and it, as I said, it's a shoot that I kind of, you know, kind of forgot about and overlooked. And the Telegraph used it really nicely. And they only used one picture, but the other pictures, as is so often the case, you know, are interesting to go back over and kind of re-examine, because there are some genuine moments. There's one in his house where there's a sort of cat climbing over him, and I think the Telegraph used that at the beginning in the contents page. Actually, I was going to say they used one picture, they did actually use two. It really takes time to kind of reflect and sit with these images over decades, and then after time has passed, quite often your analysis, the way, the barometer by which you kind of judge these pictures shifts and changes, and so pictures that you thought were good now look like you were trying too hard, and the pictures that were kind of genuine moments, you know, have a sort of romantic quality
Yeah.
and a nostalgia, and but most importantly, authenticity.
Yeah. And I think it comes across in the pictures.
Mm.
It looks like you just had a nice day out with him and
Mm.
had a walk and a chat and
On
took
the
some pictures
M25.
on the M25. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a crazy suggestion, but it reflects well on him that he kind of went along with it.
Yeah. Well, he was just a kid. Probably so are you. Actually, no,
Mm. Well,
not
I
quite.
wasn't a kid, but, you know, I was in my 30s,
Yeah.
old enough to know better.
Cool. All right, I think that's good. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a piece of advice to photographers, trust your instincts. I mean, I get people kind of, through doing this, quite often I get people contacting me and asking me advice, and someone, you know, it's charming and sweet, and it's good to get positive feedback, but someone sort of said, you know, can you tell me if my pictures are any good? And I said to them, you know, don't let me be the arbiter of whether your pictures are any good. Trust your instincts. You know, it's so subjective. And some people, including the PR, probably thought it was crazy me suggesting driving to the M25 and parking on the hard shoulder. I probably wouldn't get away with that now, because the police would have been called, and you know, I would have been coming back up the back embankment to a whole coterie of policemen, sort of telling me off for stopping on the motorway. But what I would say is just trust your instincts, and be true to that inner voice of, you know, which you might feel you're doing what you're doing is ridiculous, but actually it could be a way of actually doing something far more interesting.
And different. Yeah.
Just not don't conform to conventional notions of what you think people want. You know, just be playful and have fun.